What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. I know I did not post on Saturday my top 10 player list like I had been for the past month, but today I am kicking off Defensive Player Week. We're going to look at the top 10 defensive players in each section of the defense. That's defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs. And today I'm going to be talking to you guys about my personal top 10 defensive linemen coming into 2021. Hey, I'm just a huge college football fan. I am no expert, but the support on the channel lately has been terrific. So if you like what you see from me or you find yourself coming back, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a couple seconds and it's free. Again, it won't hurt me if you end up changing your mind at a later date. You can also share the videos as well. Helps push them out to people who want to see the content. And you can leave a comment down below telling me your thoughts on the defensive lineman that we're going to see in 2021. Maybe a player that I didn't put on this list. But again, that's the thing, right? So these defensive player lists that I've been putting together, of course, the defensive lineman one I just finished, hence why I'm recording it. Linebackers, defensive backs, I'm still kind of working on, but they were some hard lists to put together, especially this one. And trust me, I considered probably up to 40 players to put onto this list, and you're only going to see 16 of them. So again, if a player that you don't see on, or a player that you root for or that you think is top 10 is not on this list, again, it's also a matter of opinion, and there are also a lot of really talented defensive linemen out there. Also, I do have to mention that if you don't see a defensive lineman on this list, he's probably on the linebacker list, as there have been some cases where defensive linemen go back to play linebackers or linebackers go up to play defensive line. So if you see like, well, he's not a defensive lineman, he's a linebacker, played defensive line last year, you're like, well, what about this guy? You're probably going to see him in tomorrow's video. Case in point with one player that I will talk about tomorrow. But for right now, let's talk about top 10 defensive linemen in 2021. Here are my top six honorable mentions. Again, there are a lot of talented players that I couldn't put on this list. But in my opinion, these six were the closest to getting into the top 10. Myles Murphy for Clemson is with the best defensive line in the country, in my opinion. And this group looks very similar to the group that won it all in 2018, right? Very, very talented player. Just missed my top 10. And you call me biased if you want, but Tyreek Smith, Zach Harrison, a couple players that play for the Ohio State Buckeyes or my Ohio State Buckeyes. But Tyreek Smith, Zach Harrison, some of the more underrated players in my opinion. I know Zach Harrison's getting a lot of praise for the NFL, excuse me. But Tyreek Smith can also be a really good player. But both these guys should have excellent seasons in the scarlet and gray. You also have some Oklahoma defensive linemen. Excuse me, guys, words are hard. But some defensive linemen at Oklahoma. Pictured here is Isaiah Thomas. No, not the basketball player, the defensive lineman. You can also throw Perion Winfrey into the mix. Pretty good defensive players at Oklahoma as well. Dante Stills out of the University of West Virginia. Had one of the best defenses in the nation last year. Stills was a big part of that. And I don't see him taking any sort of steps back. In fact, I see him taking some steps forward. You also got Alabama's Fedarian Mathis, along with some other talented players on the Alabama defensive line. But again, these guys were the closest six to making my top 10. So who actually made my top 10? You guys are going to find out right now. So let's kick it off here. Number 10, Jermaine Lowell. I'm going to show you some stats from 2020. Some guys' stats might be from 2019. Again, depends on circumstances from last year and whichever stat line I think best represents the player that they can be. Again, a lot of it depends on how many games they played last year. For Jermaine Lowell, Arizona State only played 4 games last year, but was still a force to be reckoned with. 24 tackles, 17 of them by himself, 5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, forced a fumble, then recovered it along with 2 passes defended. And may I mention too, in 2019, when Arizona State played a full season, he had 71 tackles, which is an insane number for a defensive lineman. Truly insane. And when you look and you compare tape from 2019 to 2020, albeit we had a smaller sample size, he seemed to improve his versatility from 2019 to 2020 in that, well, he can now play almost anywhere on the defensive line, and he's improved in both the run and the pass game. Quite a bit, and enough to where I can put him on this list. He's also on an Arizona State team that I really like. It's also a big factor why he's here. Terrific instincts and great football IQ. Again, he's able to read plays fairly well in both the run and pass game, hence how much he's improved it. Lowell is fantastic, but he's got to work on shedding his block. So that is one gripe that I do have about Jermaine Lowell is It doesn't necessarily happen all the time. Most of the time, he's able to shed blocks pretty well, but in certain cases where he's maybe lined up with an offensive tackle that necessarily might be smaller than him or not as strong as him, at least perceived to be that way, he doesn't win that battle 100% of the time. And it leaves you questioning why. Well, his block shedding can use some work. Now, of course, it's not bad. And in fact, it's actually pretty good. But in order to take that next step to really get some recognition towards that next level, he's got to work on block shedding. But in my opinion, every other facet of this game is fantastic. He's at number 10. Number 9 for me is Jordan Davis. And although the stat lines might not show how good of a player Jordan Davis is, when you watch the tape, he is a very disruptive force for this Bulldogs defense. 16 tackles, 7 by himself with 1 tackle for loss and 1 sack last year. Jordan Davis is an absolute force on that defensive line with explosive and powerful hands. And that explosive and powerful hands, being able to get around, again, like we talked about with Jermaine Lowell, how he can improve on his block shedding. Jordan Davis is some of the best block shedding in the entire nation with those hands. And it also leads him to be an excellent run defender. And then when you look at his size, you wouldn't necessarily look at a guy like Jordan Davis and look at his frame and think, wow, he's got some great lateral movement. But when you watch Jordan Davis play, you're going to think to yourself, wow, that's some great lateral movement. And when I was watching tape of him, I couldn't help but notice how well he was able to move laterally and help defend the run. He really is one of the best run defensive linemen in the entire nation, and also has some pretty solid pass defense as well. Can he break out in 2021? And I don't know if breakout is normal, or I don't necessarily think breakout is the right term for it, but can the stats support what he puts out on the field? The stats most of the time look pretty, the stats can be flashy numbers and things like that. But for Jordan Davis, the stat line hasn't really jumped out at you. Hasn't really jumped out as a guy that was like, oh, that's a really good defensive lineman. When you watch tape, he's excellent. I just want the stats to be able to prove that in 2021, and I think they can. Jordan Davis is an excellent defensive lineman to me at number 9. All right, number 8's a guy that also wears red and black, but it's not for George. It's for the Cincinnati Bearcats, and it's Maji Sanders. 31 tackles, 22 by himself, along with 10.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and 5 passes defended. That is a very impressive stat line for Maji Sanders, and a Cincinnati defense that is one of the best in the nation. Also one of the most underrated in the nation at being the best. He's a true speed rusher. He has excellent speed, quickness, agility, whatever you want to say that has to do with how fast he is. He's got it. He is one of the fastest defensive linemen in the nation. And I like this word. So when I was reading scouting reports on him, there was one scouting report, I believe from like draftnetwork.com or something. Yes, I read scouting reports before I make these videos, with suddenness. And that was a word that I really like. So suddenness is a word that I like using when talking about Maji Sanders, because he can be going one way and then boom, can go the other way. And that's, again, credit to his speed. He's got a lengthy frame that leads to tackles for loss. You see the tackles for loss and the sacks. Don't think I need to explain that one that much. Wingspan, huge, big wingspan. I have a long wingspan just because I'm lengthy as well. But Maji Sanders is able to use it at the next level, but he's got to get stronger. He's got to put on some muscle. Really does have to get stronger. There are some times where he can outspeed offensive linemen, but some of the better offensive linemen in the American, he can't outmuscle. And that's where his flaw is. As soon as he's able to outmuscle other offensive linemen, he's going to be a top 5 defensive lineman. Could go in the first round of the draft. I would not be surprised. But Sanders at number 8. Aiden Hutchinson, who plays for that team up north. Okay, kidding. It's the Michigan Wolverines. Plays for the Michigan Wolverines. He's at number 7 on this list. His 2020 stat line just doesn't do it justice for me. So I'm putting up his 2019 stats, and it's incredible. It's a very, very good stat line. 69 tackles, nice. 34 of them by himself. 10 tackles for loss with 3.5 sacks, along with 2 forced fumbles and 6 passes defended as a defensive lineman. He plays everywhere on the defensive line. You want to play him on the outside? Great. Play him on the inside? Great. Play him in the middle of a 3-4? Great. Like, play him anywhere you want. Maybe even have him line up at linebacker position. Throw the offense off a little bit. Do whatever you want. He's that good of a player. Aiden Hutchinson, can play anywhere along that defensive line. And he's surprisingly good with his body control. Of course, when you look at defensive linemen, you're going to talk about their run defense, how they have to be pretty good. Their hands, they got to be pretty good. Well, Aiden Hutchinson's body control, in my opinion, might be one of the best in the entire nation among defensive linemen. Not necessarily among defensive players, but among defensive linemen, one of the best. Hence why he's on this list. But he's got to improve his pass rush. His run defense is really, really good, and it's going to take him to the next level. But he has some potential to improve that pass rush defense. And if he can do that, Aiden Hutchinson is a much better defensive lineman for right now, though, at number 7. All right, number 6 is a guy by the name of Xavier Thomas. We're going to look at what he did in 2019 because 2020 affected him in like COVID and personal life. So 2019, 27 tackles, 10 by himself, 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and 2 passes defended. He has one of the best powerful bursts off the snap. He is powerful. As soon as that ball is snapped, his get off, boom, he'll hit you and throw offensive linemen back. Like, he is a powerful dude. And he has the skill to go to the next level. In fact, Xavier Thomas, in my opinion, is on a mission. I think some people might look at this and say, why do you have Xavier Thomas at number 6? Well, in my opinion, he's also not even the best defensive lineman on this Clemson team. But Xavier Thomas is on a mission. He's lost 30 pounds this offseason, which might seem like a thing that a lot of people are going to overlook. But since January, he's lost 30 pounds, and he's going to continue. I believe I read somewhere his target goal is like 250, 255. He was up towards 300 and is down to around 260. So if he can lose like a couple more pounds, not necessarily saying that it's going to be a bad thing if he doesn't, but losing 30 pounds in 8 months, that's incredible. Not even 8 months, right? Losing 30 pounds in 7 months, that's incredible. Xavier Thomas is on a mission. I think the stat line is going to explode for him in 2021. He's at number 6. Call me biased if you want, but Haskell Garrett is number 5 on this list. An incredible story last year. So Garrett was trying to break up a fight in a bar, and then it got violent, and guns got involved, and he got shot through the face. Ouch, that hurts. He was very, very lucky where the bullet hit him. I believe it went straight through cheek to cheek. I can't quite remember, but he was in the hospital for a long time. Finally got out, wondered if he was going to be the same player, and 2020 was his best year. 20 tackles, 12 by himself, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, along with the pass deflected that turned into an interception that he caught in the end zone for a touchdown. So he's got strong hands in the run game. And then last year, he proved he can have strong hands in the pass game as well, getting his hands up, looking big, and creating a wall that the quarterback has to get the football past. Haskell Garrett is a big dude. In my opinion, when I watch him play, to me, he's the definition of the big man on campus. I mean, just look at his frame. He's tall, he's big, he's strong, he's athletic. Like, Haskell Garrett has got it all. He has got all the things you want in a defensive lineman. In my opinion, though, his get-off can be faster. Now, the limitation that Haskell Garrett has on his get-off is just a limitation to his size, right? Like, his get-off can only get so fast, and he's going to have to drop some LBs if he wants that get-off to get really fast, which, in my opinion, I don't want Haskell Garrett doing that. Like, he's really, really utilized as a big body on that defensive line. But although his get-off might be slow, it can get faster, sure. How much faster? That's the big question I have for Haskell Garrett. I do need to see it get a little bit better, especially with playing guys like Harrison and Smith that already have good get-offs. And now with players coming in like Sawyer and JT and among others coming back as well. Haskell Garrett, in my opinion, is the best defensive lineman on Ohio State. I know Ohio State fans are going to make the case for Zach Harrison. I personally like Haskell Garrett more. To me, Haskell Garrett is at number 5. Truly an incredible player to watch. All right, number 4 is a guy by the name of Brian Breesy. So unless you're a Clemson fan or you're a huge college football fan, you might not have heard of him. But Brian Breesy is a fantastic defensive end. I mean, wow. Now, as a freshman, his stat line isn't the super, like, it isn't going to jump out at you, but when you watch tape, whew, whew, I mean, I have no other way to describe it. Brian Breesy is disgusting. 23 tackles, 13 by himself, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 2 passes defended in his freshman year last year. So he came on and was very disruptive. But what Dabo Swinney has said about him in the offseason is now he's disruptive with a purpose. He's starting to learn the fundamentals. He's starting to learn the play designs. He's starting to learn the playbook. He's starting to learn the play reads. So he's starting to get disruptive with a purpose, which is something you absolutely want out of a defensive lineman. And his get off and first step, one of the best in the entire nation, in my opinion, the best on this Clemson team. It's elite, and it's going to take him to the next level. Don't be surprised if you see Breesy really high up on NFL draft boards in the coming years. But in my opinion, can he reach his high upside? That's the only question I have for Brian Breesy. Now, we saw it last year, right? And in my opinion, last year was just a glimpse of what Brian can do. But can he reach his high upside? I think he's going to be getting a lot of praise, a lot of hype, a lot of attention. Can he reach it? Can he get there? In my opinion, that the answer to that question is yes, but does he? We're going to find out in 2021. But Brian Breesy, to me, in the top 5 for sure, to me is number 4. I am very impressed with what Brian Breesy has put together on the field. All right, number 3 is a guy that wasn't heard from a lot last year, George Karlaftis. That is how you say that last name. Was born in Athens, Greece, didn't play a down of football until the 8th grade, and he is excelling as a Purdue Boilermaker. We're going to look at his stats in 2019, and 2019 was his freshman year, and it was filthy. 54 tackles, 30 by himself, 17 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, recovered 2, also had an interception. It was tipped up in the air, ended up being caught. That was in the game against TCU a couple years ago. 2 passes defended. So again, 2019, an absolutely incredible year for George Karlaftis. And many project that he's going to be a first-round draft pick. He uses his size and his strength really, really well. Might I say, probably one of the best in the entire nation. George Karlaftis gets overlooked, maybe because he plays on Purdue, maybe because he didn't play a lot last year. But no, you cannot overlook him. He has excellent speed and agility as well. And when you look at his size, again, defensive linemen aren't necessarily known for being the quickest or most agile players. Yet George Karlaftis might be the quickest and most agile defensive lineman in this year's class. But he's got to work on his run game fundamentals. His pass game, I'm not worried about. He's shown that he can get his hands up and create sacks, create those tackle for losses. But his run game fundamentals, and by that I mean just being able to read the play. There have been a couple instances where George Karlaftis has also been able to grab a hold of the ball carrier, but hasn't been able to bring him down. So that's something that Karlaftis is just going to have to work at. But in my opinion, the product from Greece could look like a steal in the NFL draft. To me, he's at number 3, very underrated, at least among other players. Number 2 is DeMarvin Leal. And of course, by now, you're going to know who's at number 1. But DeMarvin Leal, in my opinion, is the second best defensive lineman in the nation. Excuse me. I thought I was going to sneeze for a second. 37 tackles, 18 by himself, 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery with an interception and 3 passes defended last year. He has elite level strength and elite level power. In fact, it's going to take him to the next level. Could end up being a first-round draft pick as well. I think that's what a lot of people are projecting him as. Could be the first defensive lineman off the board, too. You never know, but the guy at number 1 is pretty much a unanimous vote to go first out of his position. DeMarvin Leal is one of the most dependable players in the entire nation. I'm sorry, did you want me to say more? Because that's it. He's dependable. Play him anywhere. He'll get his job done. He does what's asked of him. But in my opinion, in order to really guarantee that he's going to fit in with the team at the next level, we all know he's going to get drafted this year. But in order to really fit in with the team at the next level, in my opinion, he's got to find his home along the offensive line, whether that be on the inside, on the outside. That's going to be for him to figure out. But I think as soon as he finds his home, this is one of the best defensive linemen in the nation, and definitely could be one of the best defensive linemen at the next level as well. But of course, the guy at number one, who else would it be? Kayvon Thibodeaux. I'm not going to talk about him a lot. You know why he's at number one. 2020, 42 tackles, 25 by himself, 9.5 tackles for loss with 3 sacks. He had like 9 sacks in 2019 and 3 pass defended. Insane athletic ability. Transition from power to speed is effortless. There's nothing not to like about Kayvon Thibodeaux. He is excellent all over the field. But in my opinion, he's got to show his tools of the trade. And by that, he's got to show his pass rushing moves a little bit more. He relies on his speed and his strength and his size a lot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's good enough to win him pretty much every battle he's going to face in college. But at the next level, yeah, he's got to start showing more of those moves, using his hands more. But really, there's not a whole lot you don't like about Kayvon Thibodeaux. What more do I have to say about this kid? He is the number one defensive lineman in 2021. And that's going to do it for the first iteration of Defensive Player Week. So if you guys like this video, hey, leave a like on it. If you really like it, you can share it, even subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at my top 10 linebackers in 2021. So I'll see all you guys tomorrow. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder as usual. Goodbye.